GDP explained, measuring the nation's output. John stands on the rooftop of his workshop, looking out over the bustling city skyline. For months, he has been focused on the micro world, his own costs, his own risks, and his own keyboards. But today, he realizes that his workshop doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is one tiny gear in a massive, roaring machine called the national economy. On the news, he keeps hearing anchors talk about GDP growth or recessions, and he wonders, how do you even begin to measure the productivity of an entire country? How do you add up the value of a haircut, a military jet, a loaf of bread, and one of John's custom mechanical keyboards? To find the answer, John turns to the work of N. Gregory Mankiw to understand the single most important statistic in macroeconomics, gross domestic product. As John dives into his studies, he learns that GDP is the market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period. This sounds like a mouthful, so John breaks it down step by step to see how his own business fits in. First, market value. Since you can't add an apple to an orange, you use their prices to create a common denominator. If a keyboard is worth $100 and a burger is worth $10, the keyboard contributes 10 times as much to GDP as the burger. Second, final goods. This is crucial for John. When he buys copper wire and plastic switches to build a keyboard, those individual parts are intermediate goods. If the government counted the copper, then the switches, and then the finished keyboard, they would be counting the same value 3 times. To avoid this, GDP only counts the final product sold to the end user, the keyboard itself. Third, produced. GDP only includes goods currently produced. When John sells a brand new keyboard, it adds to GDP. But if a customer later sells that same keyboard on a used goods website, that second sale doesn't count. Nothing new was created. The keyboard just changed hands. Finally, within a country. If John, a stickman living in this country, produces a keyboard, it counts toward this nation's GDP. Even if he were a citizen of another country, as long as the work happens here, it's part of the domestic product. To see the big picture, John looks at the famous expenditure formula. GDP equals consumption plus investment plus government purchases plus net exports. Here, the total output stands for GDP. John realizes that every dollar of GDP is spent by someone, and Menke breaks this spending into 4 distinct buckets. The first bucket is consumption, represented by the letter C. This is the largest part of the economy. It's John buying a morning coffee, paying for a haircut, or subscribing to a streaming service. It is the spending by households on goods and services. The second bucket is investment, represented by the letter I. In macroeconomics, investment doesn't mean buying stocks or bonds. For John, investment means buying a new 3D printer for his workshop or building a new warehouse. It is the purchase of goods that will be used in the future to produce more goods and services. Even when a person buys a brand new house, it falls into this category rather than consumption. The third bucket is government purchases, represented by the letter G. This includes the salary of the teacher at the local school, the cost of paving the road that leads to John's shop, and the equipment for the national military. It does not, however, include transfer payments like Social Security or unemployment benefits, because the government isn't buying a new good or service in exchange for that money. It's simply redistributing income. The final bucket is net exports, represented by the letters NX. John loves this part because he started selling his keyboards to fans in other countries. Net exports are calculated as exports minus imports. When John sells a keyboard to a gamer in Paris, that's an export, representing the variable X that adds to his country's GDP. But when John buys specialized switches from a factory in Tokyo, that's an import, representing the variable M. Since the switches were produced elsewhere, they are subtracted from the total so that GDP only reflects what was made right here at home. Suddenly, John spots a trap. He looks at his records and sees that last year he produced 100 keyboards at $100 each, totaling $10,000. This year he produced the same 100 keyboards, but because of a massive price hike, he sold them for $200 each, totaling $20,000. If he only looks at the total dollar amount, the nominal GDP, it looks like his business and the economy doubled in size. But John knows he hasn't actually produced more. He's just changed the labels on the price tags. To solve this, economists use real GDP. This measure strips away the effect of rising prices by using a base year to value production. By keeping prices constant, real GDP tells John whether the actual volume of goods and services is growing. If the number of keyboards produced stays the same, real GDP stays the same, even if prices skyrocket. This is the truth serum of macroeconomics. It allows John to see if the economy is truly becoming more productive or if it's just suffering from a fever of rising prices. As John finishes his coffee, he realizes that GDP is more than just a number on a chart. It is a rough measure of the standard of living. Countries with higher GDP per person tend to have better schools, cleaner water, and better health care. While it doesn't measure everything, like the beauty of a sunset or the happiness of a family, it measures our ability to obtain the tools that make a good life possible. John climbs down from the roof with a new sense of purpose. He isn't just a builder of keyboards. He is a contributor to the total national output in the national equation. Every keyboard he finishes is a small pulse in the heartbeat of the global stage, a tangible piece of the gross domestic product that defines the strength of his nation.